change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
What exists, reality itself, is gorgeous. It is the plenum, the fullness of total joy. The universe is a celebration. It's a fireworks show to celebrate that existence is. Wowee.
For those of us seeking a life of meaning and purpose, capturing fulfillment in every moment of now, seeking the truths of our reality so we can live this life to its fullest. This is the Live This Life podcast. And I'm your host, Heath Cummings. I'm here to inspire you to ask yourself the question every day. Are you living, or are you killing time? I'm only human. What can I say, guys? I want to start this episode off with actually a quick clip that helped inspire this entire episode by Jordan Peterson, one of my favorite modern philosophers, psychologists, always dropping nuggets of knowledge, and this one was one of my favorite ones.
Part of spiritual development is to recognize the satanic tendencies that characterize you and to fully wrestle with them and to integrate them. That's the thing. It's not so much to cast them away. It's to transmute them, and you can see the difference between people who've done that and people who haven't, at least to some degree, because people who haven't integrated the shadow at all are naive. And you can tell that when you look at them, and you can tell that when you talk to them. And because they're naive, they're often resentful as well because they get taken advantage of. And someone who's integrated that more, they're dangerous in the martial arts sort of way, which is they're dangerous, but they don't have to use it because their presence radiates implicit potential for havoc, and that's really necessary. It's one of the things that gives people self-respect.
Definitely one of my favorite clips, and this is a very well-known one from Mr. Peterson, who has been a victim of cancel culture this year for some of his free-thinking thoughts, and that just puts him at the top of my list of favorites. If cancel culture is trying to go after him, he's definitely at the top of my list, but you can't cancel that guy with me. I gotta say that his work is amazing. And this clip is relevant today because I want to discuss this conundrum that many of us in the spiritual community find themselves in from time to time. And when I talk about the spiritual community, I mean, I feel like it's those who, I guess in a modern sense, feel like they're part of the awakened masses, right? I don't like to use the word woke. I think that's getting a little too pop culture-ish, and its ideology is somewhat being hijacked into something that I feel is quite divisive now. So I don't align with woke culture because in all honesty, I feel like if something is out there either silencing people or creating division amongst the people, I am not aligned with it, never will be. So, I wouldn't refer to the people who are in that realm of the spiritually awakened just as the awakened, and even that in and of itself can sound a little bit self-righteous to a certain extent. But I'm referring to those out there in the world who are tapping into themselves in a much higher echelon of existence. I'm basically referring to those people who are separating themselves from the day-to-day zombie of the world that can be out there today. And unfortunately, that is a majority of the masses that are currently out there in this world. I'm trying not to be derogatory at all in that sense. Not doing a very good job of it either. I'll admit that myself. But I'm referring to the people who are serving the system. When I talk about the zombies, they stare at their phones all day long, and they're serving a system that truly only serves some of the people at the very top. And there's a large demographic of us who see the entire thing. We see the machine for what it is. But despite there being so much awakening consciousness content out there, there are so many people who choose to live in unawareness. They choose that blue pill, like in the Matrix analogy, and they're going to be blissfully, painfully unaware, I guess, of what might be really happening in this world. And I'm not just speaking to just the awakened here either. I'm speaking to those specific people who are not aware of the world around them. And in hopes that this podcast and many like it are the alarm bell that wakes them up, because there are people who are blindly following the, quote unquote leaders of this world down horrific paths and a lot of moral corruption. And these people are steering the masses right over the cliff and away from their divinity, in my own personal perspective of what I'm seeing in the world. And I'm talking about everything. If it's shoved in your face, it's most likely manufactured from those specific people I'm talking about, whether it's, the availability of mind-altering drugs now and alcohol and, the poisonous food that we eat and all the stuff that we consume as far as content goes. All of it is there to keep us dumb, glum, numb to everything about the world and who we really are at our cores and what we should be inwardly searching for, I think. And that stuff is there to keep us distracted. But instead, the whole distractions and the dumbed down thing, I feel like it is something that we're actually shaking the shackles of. And I think it's there to basically thwart our ambition, because ambition now is apparently toxic, and, from certain things that I've seen out there, and it's that we shouldn't be ambitious and we shouldn't want to stand up for ourselves, which is exactly what this episode is all about today. And I see these conflicts in people who are enlightened and they get accused of not being such just because they may still have those moments where they are fighting against this status quo that is one that is left to, I guess, leave us in a little bit of disarray and in shambles. And, and they're doing the opposite of the people who just lock in step and they just follow the orders and they just stay in line for the sake of, not appearing whimsical. And I'm talking about some of the spiritual community who just doesn't believe in any form of conflict, because anything like conflict or even being sort of defensively offensive, or even being considered boisterous, I guess, is blasphemy in the spiritual community. And I say that's rubbish to a certain extent. I say it's rubbish. There's a demographic of people out there in this world who are really the awakened observers. They're trying to guide many others to their own power, potential, and purpose. And got that power, potential, and purpose from my man, Princeton Clark. If you guys that don't know who he is, go look him up. I've been on the podcast quite a few times. But that power, potential, and purpose is something that once you find it, it's almost like you become an unstoppable force. You are able to be one of the ones who pushes their way through the crowd of zombies to move toward your dreams, and you become less reliant on that matrix of a world that's around you. And unfortunately, when you become one of those people, you have to physically push your way through the crowd of zombies, and you have to inflict a little bit of force. And sometimes that comes with a bit of conflict. And, this small but growing group of people, I would say we are the observers of not only our own behavior, but all of those people who are around us as well. And not more of a judgmental sense, but in my own sense, it's from a pure place of fascination and trying to learn and hoping to maybe judge my own behavior, but also inspire other people when I can see them doing something that I wouldn't perceive as acting in, I guess, their highest potential, and we're all in our continuing growth paths. We grow more and more every single day. And those of us who are aware of that are out there trying to encourage other people to do the same. And, a lot of us want to see each other reach our highest potential in this lifetime, because I feel like collectively we are just at this critical juncture in the history of humanity. And I feel like we've maybe had some stops and starts along the way with all the new stuff that's getting discovered about our human history. I feel like we've been at these pinnacles in the past when we're led to believe by mainstream academia that we are just now reaching our pinnacle from caveman days. And there's so much evidence out there that proves otherwise. It's overwhelming at this point that there were many civilizations, many of whom were likely more advanced than us, that were here before us. And what happened to them? If we're at a critical juncture at this point in our history, we need to take advantage of this. If we're hitting this pinnacle, we need to do everything we can to accelerate and move away from whatever has destroyed these places, these civilizations of the past, whether it was made by their own hands or something natural. That's to be debated. But I feel like so much has been lost. And I know of stories throughout the past of how even not just grand civilizations, but just empires have fallen because of their vanity. And I feel like if we shed that, this world can continue to move at an amazing pace if we just eliminate some of the hangups that tend to be out there in this world today, and we become that dominant force as one cohesive unit instead of this division that we see in the world right now. It's almost a little too easy to become that dominant force if you think about it, because there's 8 billion of us and maybe a couple hundred of them who are trying to manipulate the world to keep us where we are. It shouldn't be that hard, but for some reason it is. You know, I guess I like to call them the spiritual warriors, but we've somehow been lumped into this sort of like peace, love, and rainbows, flower power children of days gone by. And to the contrary, like, I feel like we are far from that dynamic. You know, this spiritual warrior demographic who had to weather so many storms lately, from believing in stuff that was just called woo-woo, and, you know, until science actually proved a lot of the woo-woo stuff right, you know, and it was accepted fact finally when a whole bunch of people jumped on board, or weathering the storm of the last few years of propaganda, you know, being called conspiracy theorists rather than what they really are, critical thinkers. And a lot of those critical thinkers have been right about a lot of those things that were called some conspiracy theories to begin with. You know, when it came to, you know, the origins of the virus or certain medical treatments, or even like all the way up to UFOs now, those are typically the same people who were so open-minded that they didn't trust what was on the surface because it just didn't sit right with them. The evidence didn't line up, and they were just told to believe something just because someone in an official capacity was telling them to believe it. And here we are, we're having this 80-year-old lie about UFOs and all these other things that have happened over the last 3 or 4 years, so many of them turning out to be complete fabrications and straight up lies to the public. I mean, all the way up to one of the grandest ones of the JFK assassination. You know, we're starting to find out that the CIA was indeed involved and that they had certain, Oswald was one of their assets. A whole bunch of stuff is coming out. So it's just these people that are the awakened ones, they've had to weather a barrage of so much stuff, so many attacks on their personal beliefs for the sake of their spirituality and their religion and all their other protected freedoms. And they've had to be anything but passive and whimsical through all of that kind of stuff. Unlike the flower power people who were very passive, they didn't want to have any conflict, and that hasn't been an option. You know, it's been a legit fight. So, you know, despite the ferociousness that it took to survive the last few years, this expectation is out there, though, that if you consider yourself spiritual, you're some sort of a passive Buddhist monk who's going to sit there and take abuse at the hands of anyone and anything for the sake of remaining passive. You know, the passivity is like some sort of badge of honor, like you're supposed to wear it, and it's the expectation. And I'm here to say right up front, it's not. And if that's your expectation, stay tuned to all of this, but stay tuned to this episode because it's going to be a show. You know, and I'm bringing this subject to you today as it stems from the comments section of a social media post that I made a little while ago, a few months ago now at this point, where someone, in my opinion, was very rude. They were very rude to me about my physical appearance in a pretty condescending way. And to be honest, I'm pretty sick of it, not only toward me, but toward anyone. You know, and my response toward that crappy comment sparked a little bit of debate between someone who was a dedicated listener. Not sure if she still is anymore or not, but, you know, I hope she is, so she can hear my perspective about this whole thing. Because just as in this challenge, like all other challenges, I found the value in the uncomfortableness of it all. I found the value in sort of the pain, the reflection of the entire situation once I Monday morning quarterbacked my own actions. You know, the uncomfortableness was something that, like most uncomfortableness in your life, it tends to help you grow in some sort of way. And, you know, in that particular listener's opinion in this situation, my response to the crappy comment about my physical appearance, quote unquote, completely wiped out everything she thought about me, which over the course of 130 episodes that she said she had listened to, you know, it fired me up. Like, that really, really fired me up. I think more than the original comment actually did. You know, enough for me to have to sit with that situation for quite a bit and digest it for a while before I actually spoke about it. But as I sat with it, I actually did have different levels of response. I observed the observer about the entire situation in my cave of sort of self-awareness, like sinking into this thing and playing it all back in my head about what I said, why I said it, and everything. And I tried to view the perspectives of that shitty person who left the comment as well. Why did they do it? Where might they have been coming from? As well as the person who was the former listener. Like, how did I look in her eyes? How did my response look, and how is that going to actually really affect her opinion going forward? Is she just not like a certain thing that I said some other time and is taking it out on me for this one thing? It seemed like a minor thing to actually cut someone off that happens to be one of your podcasts, like your favorite ones that you listen to all the time. It was kind of strange. After all, that self-reflection is so important. It's one of the most important skills I think any of us can develop. And, when you're aware of it, you learn from it and you wake up the next day a completely different person. Every single day you open your eyes, you have the benefit of being a completely different person than you were the day before. You've had a whole day's worth of information that you downloaded and had to process, and you just evolve every day when you wake up. And that version of me and every day ever since was a completely different version that got to basically have the privilege of waking up and evaluating this among many other things. And I think, to me, that's the paramount of self-awareness. That is the sort of you're hitting towards the top of it, after seeing that whole thing from many different perspectives. And after the dust settles, I think, and your ego chills the F out too, you get to see it from as many angles as you can when you can do something like that. So after doing so, I got a few different perspectives rather than just standing strong on that one and saying I'm right and you're wrong. And, the one that my ego might lead me to emphasize, I unpacked it. But before I dive in and I unpack it all, that complicated web of self-reflection, I would like to remind everybody who's listening to subscribe to the podcast, hit the like button, the follow button if you're listening on the Wisdom app, because I've got listeners right now. I've got a few people that have already logged on the Wisdom app. If you don't have the Wisdom app, go on there, because I'm going to be doing many more live podcast episode recordings, and you'll basically get this before everybody if you're on there, because it's literally being recorded live. So, but if you're listening on any podcasting platform to the pre-recorded version, the podcast is available pretty much everywhere. So follow it along on that platform that you're listening on. And please, if you have the opportunity, leave those ratings and reviews, because that not only keeps the wind in my sails to keep this ship afloat and moving forward, but it helps us get out there in the sea of over 3 million podcasts in this world. And it keeps propelling us to the front of the pack, which I've recently discovered through this amazing platform, Chartable. If any of you are podcasters, check that one out. But this podcast is often trending in the top 200 spots in several different categories, like self-improvement, spirituality, philosophy, religion. And just to start off 2024, we hit the #1 spot in spirituality, which was insane, in a few countries. One of them was Lithuania. I think we were in the top 10 for several consecutive weeks in the Philippines. I know Hong Kong, Israel, and a few other countries. It's gone global, but a few countries were charting in the top 10 in the category, and then some were charting in the top 200 overall of all this podcasts out there. So it's an amazing thing, especially when you look on this list and you're rated right next to a couple of people that you looked up to, and in some cases you're a dozen spots higher on the list than they might even be. So this is all because of the listeners who have gotten the word out there. It's an extremely humbling thing, and a bit intimidating, in fact, because there's so many people out there listening to all of our content. But I want to say thank you, everybody, from the bottom of my heart, to do what you've done already for this podcast. So please keep it up. I have a feeling 2024 is going to be huge for this show, and it's due to the dedication and intention and support from people like you. So if you haven't already made the rounds on social media, go check the social media accounts, including YouTube, the YouTube channel that has every podcast in full video. So check those out. But as always, you can find pretty much everything all in one spot if you head to livethislife.org, where we have pretty much everything, all the podcasts. Some podcasting platforms only archive a few dozen, maybe 50 to 100. So if you want every episode, you can go to the podcast link on the website and get every single episode that's archived. So check them all there. Check them all out there. And thank you all again from the bottom of my heart to do everything that you've done to make this show skyrocket to heights that I've never dreamed of. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. As many of you know, mental health is something that I take very seriously. That's why I've chosen to partner the podcast with BetterHelp. Their licensed therapists can help you identify what areas of your life you're having difficulty with and help you ride the ups and downs of life. I've personally used BetterHelp, and I have to say, for somebody who's experienced with the process of seeing therapists, BetterHelp's resources are beyond amazing. You can choose from their network of over 30,000 licensed professionals to find one that you vibe with. Want a male, female, specific ethnicity, certain religious background? BetterHelp lets you narrow it down that specifically so you can find the perfect therapist for your care. And you can easily change therapists at any time, which I have no intention of doing because my therapist, Bruce, is the man. I have amazing conversations with him. I leave our sessions not only feeling like I've taken a weight off my shoulders, but I leave the sessions with objectives to accomplish for the next appointment. You can choose video, audio, or chat sessions that all go right through the app, as well as journal entries that you can send right to your therapist so they know ahead of time what you might want to work on. They offer live webinars on a range of subjects, all of which adds to the toolbox for your mental well-being. Jump on the solution that millions are turning to. Visit betterhelp.com/livethislife to get started and get 10% off your first month of therapy. That's betterhelp.com/livethislife. There's a lot of talk about the cost of eating healthy, but it's far less expensive when considering the price of sickness. That's why I've partnered the podcast from the start with one of the highest quality supplement companies on the planet, Organifi. Our food market in the Western world is more bombarded by carcinogens like glyphosate and preservative ingredients that you can't even pronounce, all of which have a detrimental effect on literally every part of your health. Being a 2-time cancer survivor, I want to stay a survivor, which is why I do everything in my power to ensure that I'm living the healthiest life I can so I can be here for many years to come. That's why I turn to Organifi for all of my supplement needs. I start my day by adding the green juice and complete protein powder to my post-workout shake, and I end my day with the gold chocolate to help my mind and body recover from the demanding life that I live. I'm into my 40s and people ask me all the time, what's your secret recipe? And part of that answer is always Organifi. If you're serious about investing in your health, then adding Organifi to your daily healthy living regimen is a must. Head over to OrganifiShop.com. That's OrganifiShop.com to check out their amazing line of products. If you find something that you want to dive into, use the promo code LIVETHISLIFE, all one word, and get 15% off of your purchase. So this whole situation is someone pretty much cutting me out because of one simple thing they didn't like, as I guess is what I'm seeing as part of a larger conundrum of the world, society lately. Just because someone doesn't like one single thing that they either hear about someone or something doesn't match part of their views, just one small little part, they cut them out completely. And it's insane to me. I guess I just have a little bit more consideration and loyalty towards people. I give them a little bit more rope. Everybody has a bad day, and you actually can have many views similar to mine, but not all of them. And it's been a strange thing where I've seen so many people cut each other out over just differences in views, especially politics. Politics is so manipulated, guys. I'm in politics. I'm an elected politician. I'm pretty much one part mayor of my town, and politics is so manufactured. So to defriend people over politics is just so foreign to me. It's insane. But I've had friends do this. I'll rephrase that. I've had loosely affiliated acquaintances because my true friends would never do something like that. But I've had people tell me that they were going to no longer follow what I do anymore because of something I said or something they didn't like, or, something that was against their beliefs. I guess something maybe that challenged their beliefs. Actually, one particular circumstance, I said something that challenged their belief system, and wanting all sorts of proof and references and everything else. I'm like, I could show it all to you, but I'll show you a few, but you gotta do some of your own research. And that was like, well, I'm not going to do my research. You convince me. And if you can't, I'm going to cut you off and all this other stuff. Insane. I've heard it a million times over. The cognitive dissonance kicks in for some people, and it really short circuits their brains. It's amazing to watch it happen. And I've seen some clinical studies on that kind of stuff because of the hardwired views that they have. And whenever something, as far as new information comes in, you have to have sort of a brain that can flow, and it's not really hardwired, which some people are due to certain upbringings and things that have happened in their life. Their brains are not as sort of neuroplastic as many of the other people are. And they cannot change their view on something as easily. And because of that, they become so entrenched in it. The more entrenched they become, the harder it is for them to change their view. So, their fuses get blown and they can't rewire those neural pathways. And the only way they can rearrange things is divert that energy into anger. And sometimes people are the target of it, like myself. And then next thing you know, they're saying, I'm not going to follow you anymore. So, naturally, when this has happened, a part of me says, too bad, so sad, thanks for coming, have a nice life. And then there's the other part of me that starts to morning quarterback myself and my actions as that whole form of self-awareness. And this tends to happen when we become cognizant of the way that we interact with the world through not only our desire to not just understand the whole situation or the world, but to improve, our overall performance in this life and our interactions with people and the experience of this life, to make positive impacts with people rather than just exert ego gratification in every single circumstance you find yourself in. It's not fulfilling. It's fulfilling in the moment, but ultimately it's not as fulfilling when you can take the alternate road. Sometimes it takes days or weeks or months to do this introspection. Like, it's not easy at first, but as you get more advanced and you practice it more and you experience a lot more things that make you do that, sometimes it gets within minutes and seconds of the situation you're going through. And instead of having to retrospect and do all of that stuff later, you're actually doing it before you have your emotional responses and you vocalize them. And when you do that, your patterns of behavior completely change. Your vocabulary does, your responses to people, and eventually your entire life shifts around it. It's an amazing series of events that happens. And I had some books that I've read and people describe that this sort of stuff starts to happen, but it's amazing how it took a long time for me, especially a very knee-jerk reaction, emotional kind of person, but being able to finally start to see it happen and govern my responses, it's an amazing thing. And it's something I try to embody every single day. I go into every single day with a mission, what's most important, go in and out of every situation that you can have in the day, trying to make a positive impact when you cross paths with people, stuff like that. But I know this stuff really well, but like I've said many, many times, there's a huge difference between knowing something and putting it into practice. And I call it information integration. I'm still a huge beginner on this stuff. Maybe intermediary at this point, intermediate phase, but by no means am I advanced in this. And the story that inspired today's episode, so let me paint an accurate picture of this thing I keep alluding to, but how it transpired and everything that went down. So simply put, this person looked at me like I did have it all together, like I have, I've learned everything, and I'm sitting here claiming to be the top person to guide you in your life, and you're going to do everything by my example and be spiritually enlightened. And I was like, no, by far, no. I am just a student of the craft who is very enthusiastic about it, has made some very big leaps and strides over a very short amount of time. And by no means am I a master. I just like to talk about the place that I am at and hope that I can get people to my level as quick as possible and watch them surpass me, get up that mountain faster than me, and turn around and give me your hand and teach me something. And I feel like we're going to do that all together the more we come together in these kinds of concepts. So that's why I'm here, not because I'm some sort of an expert. So simply put, I put a video of the amazing downfall and rebirth of Scott Stapp, who is the lead singer of the band Creed, who I had the pleasure of seeing perform twice last summer. The whole experience really spoke to me. I was never really a massive Creed fan back in the day. I liked them, but the music to me was so much more relevant now. And I sort of dove into his story too, which is what made it more relevant to me. His story, just having a huge alcohol problem and just fell from grace and has turned everything around in his life, is really clean. And man, the guy just looks and sounds amazing for a guy that's 50 years old. It's just so inspiring. So I made this video on TikTok, and pretty long one. You know, I was amazed by the whole thing, and all these wonderful comments about Scott Stapp and Creed's music and the difference it made in people's lives. Everybody's just commenting. It got 50,000+ views, thousands and thousands of likes, I don't know, hundreds of comments. And this one person decides that they're going to jump on and comment and ask if I'm wearing makeup on my eyes. And on the surface, this might not seem like a big deal to you, but the comment was made because I have a skin condition called vitiligo around my eyes. Now, I'm like a Sicilian guy. Like I get very tan in the summertime, and it becomes very pronounced. It's if you don't know what it is, it's a autoimmune disease that it can spread. And it basically takes away the pigment of your skin. And it showed up for me after the second case of cancer that I had in 2010. So it's basically a lack of pigment. Like you basically become like albino in a way in certain areas of your body. And mine happens to be right around my eyes. So in the summer months, my skin gets really, really dark. And then you have this really dark sort of line where the pigment starts to disappear. And then that really bright skin is very sensitive to the sun and can get burned really easy. So at the time I filmed that Scott Stapp thing, I had a decent tan going and my eyes looked pretty pink. And the guy referred to that, like thinking that I'm wearing pink makeup around my eyes. But even if I was, what kind of question is that to ask? Like in society, there's a lot of this, but men wear makeup sometimes or whatever. Like it was nothing but a jab. And it was kind of clear that I wasn't wearing makeup. So I lost my patience, and I've been putting up with these comments for years. When the hair started getting really thin and I started getting a bit of muscle mass and weight that was getting put on because of some medications and hormones I was on, I always had so many comments. People were making comments about my eyes. They'd say something about the hair. They'd make comments about my body, just over and over and over, and like I'm supposed to be a tough guy. Like it's not supposed to bother me at all. But for so many years, it just, every time someone said something about it, it just reminded me of that condition that I was facing and how I got there. And it brought me back to some of the darker places of trying to fight the cancer battle. So, ultimately, I've had enough. And so after years of dealing with this and a lot of insensitive body shaming comments, I'd had enough, and I started letting people have it. And this person wasn't going to be any special exception. He wasn't going to get away with it, and was the focus of my retaliation. So I filmed a response, and I will play this right now.
Yeah, so no, I don't wear makeup. And thanks for completely disregarding the video you commented on and making this comment right here. No, what you saw was a sunburn on my vitiligo. You can see it pretty bad during the summer, and it's pretty easy to get a sunburn. It's basically albinoism. It's an autoimmune disease that developed about 12 years ago after my second fight with cancer. And, for the most part, I forget that I have it until some asshole points it out. So thanks for being that guy.
And honestly, it was a side jab. This whole thing from this guy was nothing but a side jab from a troll on the internet. And introspection, sort of retrospection, I should have just ignored it, to be honest. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a friend who's a fairly big influencer, is one of the most brilliant minds I've ever met in my entire life. Basically said, don't read the comments. Whatever you do, don't read the comments, because it's not going to do you any good. And I didn't listen to that advice. And, the comment really bothered me. So there was my response. I'm only human. Like I said in the beginning, what can I say? And also I'm pretty over being anyone's doormat. I've done it for so long. I was a respectful person who tried not to use my loud voice and my quick wit and my larger physical appearance to intimidate anybody, because I've been told many times that it made people nervous, and the way that I debate people, it's an intimidating presence. So I've made a very conscious effort to mellow that out, try, I guess, shrink myself down a little bit so as to not intimidate people as much as I apparently was, and open the lines of communication so I could really get people's honest feedback and have them not just be intimidated and have that kind of be their response. But in return, I got all this bullshit. Like, this stuff is what I've been dealing with along the entire way. I've had to deal with people making comments. I first shaved my hair off and everything. And I'm tired of that. And also, my wife had gone through a lot of stuff, and it was a tough thing to see when she went through all of it. And, you know, it was like, you know what, you guys, fuck you. Like, you don't have the right to say anything about anybody's appearance. You don't know what people are going through, and you should keep your comments to yourself. And this was the peak of that. So yeah, ultimately, why this whole thing is relevant is because that certain listener that I spoke of basically decided she was going to call me out on my alleged hypocrisy, and that the message that I preach with the podcast and reading The Power of Now that I read in season 1, and this book Oneness that we're reading right now on the podcast, and quote unquote everything I've ever done is all completely erased in her eyes because I let this guy trigger me. And I posted a video response that I posted just basically calling this guy, I forget about this thing that I have until some asshole like you reminds me. So thanks for being that guy. It's that, I honestly, in my opinion, Monday morning quarterbacking it, I still don't think it's that big of a deal. But the reaction from that listener really triggered me, even worse than the comment by Mr. Makeup. Like, it was something where I'm like, come on, am I supposed to just sit here and be the world's doormat? You know, am I supposed to take what's said to me and never return it? You know, and granted, I didn't listen to that great advice, you know, but I like to read the comments, you know, because 99% of them, they're amazing and they're positive, and there's just 1% that's stupid shit, and you just got to move on past that. And, you know, it was my only opportunity, I guess, that I've had recently to really stand up for something like that, because I've kind of decided this a while back when my wife went through something similar, that I was like, you know what, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. And this was the first time that this came up since then. So, but you know, it was a way for me to show on a larger scale to those sort of people who perceive themselves as having to be completely passive if you're considering yourself to be spiritually awakened, spiritually aware, whatever. We can and do and should have our moments where we stand up for ourselves and we clap back and we show that we are the warriors still deep on the inside, and that we will fight feverishly for the things that we feel like we have to defend, no matter what that is. I'm one completely for justice, given my background. Justice is one of the cardinal virtues. Was this justice? I mean, in the moment, I guess it was, but you know, the guy actually did eat his words. He apologized for it after the fact. So I think without that, I don't think he would have had that introspection of what he said. You know, it was a learning moment for him, and I think a learning moment for anyone else who's watching on so many different levels. But honestly, was it really justice? You know, is there ever really justice? You know, to get in an internet spat with a Neanderthal who's out there in the whole interwebs, you know, who cares? Yeah, honestly, if history were filled with victory stories of battling with an internet troll, then I don't know, this world will be a much different place. Like, no one ever has a massive success story about a verbal spat with someone from the internet. You know, on the flip side, if history were filled with stories about people who just let the bullies get away with their unjust actions, then where would we be then? You know, no American Revolution, no Civil Rights Act here in the United States, no equal rights for women. You know, sometimes you just have to say enough's enough for whatever your cause is, and you have to create a boundary and draw a line in the sand. And you know, even taking the teachings of Jesus, like that's where a lot of people refer back to when they talk about, you know, the passivity of not engaging with people. You know, when he said, turn the other cheek, it didn't mean be passive. I've seen these interpretations of this and I completely vibe with it. It doesn't mean run away from the situation. I mean, it didn't mean let it go. It didn't mean hammer back either. I said, turn the other cheek, that you stand your ground, that you're turning the other cheek as almost to say, I'm not going anywhere. You know, what you did won't be tolerated. And I'm going to show you that I'm going to put myself right back in that spot where you did what you did. And I'm going to show you that you won't do it twice. Because if you do, there's going to be consequences. I'm going to show you my other cheek, and I dare you to do it again. You stood your ground, and, you know, meeting injustice with injustice isn't always going to work. You know, Gandhi had one of my favorite sayings. I have it written down here. So it's an eye for an eye, and the whole world will go blind. And I love that one because it's perfect in this situation. Acting as a balanced response to someone like that constantly is not the way the world's going to get solved either. But acting as a mirror toward them and show them that ugly reflection is likely, in my opinion, one of the best approaches I think you can have. This guy didn't like my response, obviously, and he knew that it wasn't makeup. You know, I have an uncontrollable scar on my face that I have to wear my entire life, and it reminds me of what I went through, and I sometimes really would like to forget. And you're that one asshole that had to make the comment to remind me of it. You and everyone else has ever done it. So I didn't sit there and insult him. You know, maybe the listener took that of, you know, maybe just calling the person an asshole. Maybe that was just enough of an insult to them. But I didn't sit there and throw shade at them and look at their profile picture and make negative comments about their life or anything. It was just a line in the sand. And it's one that I think everybody should metaphorically draw as well. Maybe nothing similar to this, but in your own way that's unique to your life situations. But I've noticed over the last few years how comfortable people are at insulting each other. You know, how quickly they will trash other people and throw them away for something they disagree with them with. You know, and how certain demographics of people are just ready to cancel each other. Like it's specific groups, and it's amazing to me because I've never seen anything like it in the world. You know, right the first sign of controversy, something that's not even that big of a deal, people will run out of them without a fair trial, you know, without the right to debate it even. You know, the court of public opinion is just an extremely harsh and unfair place. And it's one of the worst places to be judged. But ultimately, those of us who step into the spaces that I've chose to step into, that we find ourselves in, this is what happens. I guess it comes with the territory, unfortunately. And, you know, you're going to likely come into the crosshairs of all kinds of people. So if you let every single one of those people get to you, then it's going to be a long and unrewarding road, and you might not be in, you know, the right place for you, if that's how you're going to treat your entire career or experience out there in the world of reaching out to people. But on the flip side, this is quite an adjustment for me. You know, you have to give yourself space and grace, and I'm doing that with myself. You have to grow into these different roles and these mindsets, and it takes a long time. That information integration, you can know it all day long, but to actually integrate that knowledge into your life, that's true wisdom. You know, 9 times out of 10, I think, with everything that's ever gone on in my life, you know, I'll tell you to stand up for yourself. I'll tell you that there's many times where I did take a lot of abuse from people, and a lot of people that I guess I could have had retaliation toward. I chose not to. You know, I sat there and I turned the other cheek in the extreme sense, where I turned and walked away. And there's some virtue behind that, but there's also virtue in standing your ground. And, you know, when the time came where I met a big enough, I had a big enough belief or something that I felt like it was serious enough to stand up for, I did. You know, it was in the police world that I had. I mean, I had to file lawsuits at age 23 to stand up some really bad people, and had taken people down politically. And it was a pretty nasty situation. But in the end, it was tough when I was going through it. But in the end, I was very, very gratified to not only win, but see the bad people get removed from places that were going to allow them to continue victimizing people. And I guess that's the ultimate goal, is that you see someone who has that tendency. When you pop the bully in the nose, metaphorically, they're not going to come after you, and they're going to think twice. I think back to the Christmas Story movie, where he's going to, you know, shoot your eye out with a BB gun, and they just had a second one come out years later, just came out in like 2023. And the bully that he beats up in the movie turns out to be a cop, and he talks about how it saved his whole life the day that Ralphie jumped on him and started beating the crap out of him. And he actually ends up, I don't want to ruin the movie for anybody, but he ends up back in Ralphie's awareness in life. And it's a pretty cool little intersection. I've seen the movie, and you're into that movie, and you're looking at you're maybe looking for the second part of it. It's a pretty decent movie. It's definitely not as good as the first, but it's a good one. So, you know, there's value in having to stand up for yourself and reserving it for when it's necessary, you know, to know the difference between when to fight and when not to. So I suggest you stand your ground for what you believe in. You know, stand up for something and stop worrying if everyone is going to like you in the aftermath. Because guess what? No matter how hard you try, no matter how good you look, there are people who are not going to like you no matter what. No matter how many lives you touch, no matter what you've done, there are going to be people out there who will turn their back on you and try to shut you down at the first sign of trouble. So people are fickle like that. There's nothing more I can really say about it. So whatever that line in the sand is for you, draw it and stand strong and be ready to defend it. Because if you don't, people will walk all over you and pretty much everything that you value in your heart of hearts. And I'm not saying go out and pick a fight by any means. I'm not even saying that you should clap back at every single person. It says the dumbest thing or tiny little comment on the internet or something you don't like. I'm just saying walk away when you can. But when you're called to create that boundary, do it. Don't do the eye for an eye thing, but be the best mirror that you possibly can to show them maybe how much assholes they're being themselves, and leave yourself on higher ground after it's all said and done. One of my favorite sayings in pop culture was one that was by the one and only Mike Tyson. I'm not a fan of that guy by his character, but he has sprouted into a very interesting person in his later years. He said, social media has made you all way too comfortable with disrespecting people and not getting punched in the face for it. It is true. Not that I condone being violent and doing anything close to Mike Tyson-ish, but people are a little more leery of saying something to you in person. And it seems like they just have this unlimited courage via the internet, the keyboard warriors, and they're more apt to insult people in life in general than I think they have been in the past. So, and also, so I guess I'd like to say, let's play devil's advocate a little bit, because I love dissecting human behavior. And on the flip side of this situation, it showed me as well that I had a lot to learn. And that only came about after this listener called me out. Why did I feel like I had to actually defend a comment about someone who said I looked like I was wearing makeup? Why was that my line in the sand? Was it really about the makeup, or was it about the sort of body shaming stuff that I had put up with? So, I think when I unpacked it, for the most part, it was the comments over a long period of time that's built up to this like intolerant level of, I don't take the body comments from anybody, and I hate when people do it to each other. But it just struck a nerve just right. And I felt like in the moment that I should stand behind it, and that I should not only defend myself from those insensitive comments, but show other people they can do it too. So, I think in this sense, it was an appropriate level, but there are so many different ways and so many different unique situations. Like you can't really say that there's a certain line in the sand in general that you need to draw. It's all individual, but whether it's, the body shaming comments, that's and stuff similar to that, when someone's putting anybody down, they're saying things to put other people on a level below them, whether it's about uncontrolled weight gain or vitiligo or weight loss or anything that affects your body image. People via the internet just are ready to take other people down because they're down in their lives. And I think one of the best responses, other than maybe being that mirror, because that can become somewhat confrontational, which is going to lower the vibe of everybody involved, you say something back that can only leave the person reflecting in their behavior and what they said, because like I said, it's likely an insult. It's supposed to be a nonchalant one so they don't look like a complete ass, but the comments are most likely there to do some damage. And when you do something like you wish them well afterwards, that throws a curveball at people like that. And I think that can have just as big, if not a bigger impact than that. My wife does that all the time. She will return people's bullshit with, someone flips her off in traffic and she'll just wave and say, have a nice day. Like, not even condescending. Like, she will legit do that with people. And it's hilarious. I love it. But I say that some people will resonate with, and it will deliver the message, and some people the insult works better. I don't know. People are different. People are strange. Human beings are unique and crazy. And, I'm just here watching the show, guys. I'm one of the most unique and crazy ones out of all of them. So, sitting there and watching this whole thing develop, it just reminded me, I've had this mindset lately a lot too. One of the previous episodes that I did right around the same exact time that this whole thing went down, I think this whole incident might have been part of the inspiration for that episode too. But it was know your worth, because it was just the feeling of being taken advantage of by so many people and just letting it happen to a breaking point. And, sometimes the lion has to show the jackals who's boss. And that one comes from this clip that I'm going to play right now from Christopher Walken. I don't know exactly what movie this was from, but this is one of my favorite clips that inspired this episode, as well as the episode that I did on Know Your Worth.
This lion, he's the king of the jungle. Huge mane out there. He's laying down under a tree in the middle of Africa. He's so big. He's so hot. He doesn't want to move. Now, the little lion cubs, they start messing with him. Biting his tail, biting his ears. He doesn't do anything. The lioness, she starts messing with him, coming over, making trouble. Still, nothing. Now, the other animals, they notice this, and they start to move in. The jackals, hyenas, they're barking at him, laughing at him. They nip his toes and eat the food that's in his domain. They do this, and they get closer and closer and bolder, till one day, that lion gets up and tears the shit out of everybody, runs like the wind, eats everything in his path. Because every once in a while, the lion has to show the jackals who he is.
Love that clip. Absolutely love that one. Now, of course, sitting with this entire thing for the last few weeks, I started to think to myself, if I'm supposed to be this persona that everybody knows on this podcast and is full of inspiration, sees me do all the things that I've done with suicide prevention and cancer outreach and, leading my community and stuff like that, if I'm out there calling people assholes, it's not the greatest look. It really isn't, and I've got to realize that I'm a person who's out there inspiring people and influencing people at all times. And if we're running around responding to each other by calling each other assholes on the smallest little things, it's going to get things a little bit more negative. So there's my bit of self-reflection, though, is that these different layers of unpacking it, and it just depends on if I put myself in the emotional state of the before, during, and after. I can basically see how each level of response can bubble up in a person. But I try to live every day with sort of a feverish reverence for the privilege of being alive. And part of that privilege is being in the role that I'm in and having the ability to influence so many different people, every person that I come across, and being a leader in so many different areas. You have to approach the world, if you're trying to see it to be positive and you want everything in this world to develop in a positive way, you are what you attract. So if you're going out there and you're not out there with that exact mindset, you're going to attract more of that stuff. And it's such a conundrum that some of us find ourselves in when we start to have this spiritual awakening, because we want to be this person who inspires each other and tries to foster self-respect and respect of others by drawing the line in the sand. But where's the balance? Where's the balance when you're trying to just do nothing but observe the positive in this world? It's not always perfect. You have to have the polarities, and that's what I want most people to understand. In the Kabbalion, I'm a big follower of the Kabbalah and the Kabbalion and the Hermetic principles. Everything is based on polarity. Everything is based on a swing to the left is equal to the swing to the right, energy and vibration, and all of that stuff basically swirls around that duality of the world, the universe around you. You have to have those swings. You have to have the swings at the times where you're trying to get out there and be positive, and you've got these swings where you might not just be the most positive person ever. It's the expectation out of you, and you can tighten up that band as you're going through. There could be these big swings, and then you start to tighten them up. But that's how everybody develops. When they talk about raising their vibration, I see that as a visual representation of it, is, those waves of oscillation that you see of things operating in hertz. I was a radar operator and stuff like that. So I'm used to what the sound, and you're going through that training, they teach you what Doppler is and long range and short range and how these waves go up and down and all these different hertz. And it's as I've learned a lot of these spiritual concepts, I compute some of this information through that lens, because it's not that much different. If frequency and vibration, which is exactly what a radar would be, frequency of vibration all the way down to the base level of the universe, they've discovered that the smallest particles in the universe emerge from an oscillating field of energy, and that's it. The smallest particles that spring into existence down at the very baseline of creation comes from a field of vibration. When that field is excited enough, the particles emerge. So if that vibration, that whole talk about law of attraction, and you attract what you are, and your vibe creates your tribe, and all those whimsical things that people like to say, there's some truth to it, rooted in actual scientific experimentation and stuff. So we have to be out there on a constant basis trying to shift our energy and the sort of energy we put out there in the world. But I guess ultimately, if you're trying to influence the world, what is it? What's your goal? What ultimately are you trying to prove? Is it your ego that's representing the situation, or the highest good of the actions of your reaction? Bullies are going to do what they're going to do, until they find out that there's someone there that's going to stand up and fight back. And sometimes we have to fight back, and sometimes we have to be there, trying to move forward for peace. Having the ability to fight back is one of the biggest shows of strength. Having the ability and not doing so is probably one of the biggest virtues I think anybody can develop. Only using it when it's necessary is that action, that strength in action, and not the action itself. I think the biggest strength comes with having the ability and not doing anything with it until it's necessary. That saying of, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. It's perfect in this instance of what I'm talking about. Know it's in you if it's needed, and hope that you get to just walk in that garden at all times. You never have to use it. You don't find yourself in that war. Adopt the mindset of do no harm, but take no shit. This is one of my favorite clips that I will close out with. This one is from my favorite modern philosopher who faced cancel culture that I featured at the beginning of the episode, Mr. Jordan Peterson. And he's going to talk about the difference between being harmless and being a monster.
If you're harmless, you're not virtuous. You're just harmless. You're like a rabbit. A rabbit isn't virtuous. It just can't do anything except get eaten. It's not virtuous. If you're a monster and you don't act monstrously, then you're virtuous. But you also have to be a monster. Well, you see this all the time. Harry Potter's like that too. It's like he's flawed, he's hurt, he's got evil in him. He can talk to snakes, man. He breaks rules all the time. All the time. He's not obedient at all. But, he has a good reason for breaking the rules. And if he couldn't break the rules, him and his little clique of rule-breaking, troublemakers, if they didn't break the rules, they wouldn't attain the highest goal. So it's very peculiar, but it's a very, 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 very common mythological notion. The hero has to be a monster, but a controlled monster. Batman is like that, it's everywhere. It's the story you always hear. If you're going to be a fighter, you have to want to win. And you have to want to hurt people. Not for the sake of hurting them. That's what makes you different than an evil person. But you have to have that capacity. You have to develop that. And, that's the step on the way to enlightenment, weirdly enough, because that isn't what people think.
Having that capacity to inflict a defense, but choosing not to, is probably one of the biggest parts of the path to enlightenment, in my opinion. For everybody on Wisdom, thank you for listening. And at this time, I'd like to welcome anybody up on stage. If you want to tap the mic and tell me your opinion on this episode, what I've been talking about, if you want to jump up here and have a couple minute chat, if it's good, I will include it in the episode. So if you're going to come up here, and it's even if it's, I want to judge it as good or bad. So if it's relevant to the episode is what I'll say. And I feel like it's going to fit in there, then I will feature it at the end of the episode. But I would love to have anybody come up and tell me, what your opinion is on this, because there's some strong opinions of people who find these kind of subjects fascinating, and it's a unique place to find yourself in, where you feel like you've got to be somewhat passive for the sake of remaining positive and spiritual in this world, but then not being the doormat to anybody, because you got to be out there to sort of set the pace and show people what it means, that what mutual respect means, because sometimes they aren't smart enough to figure it out on their own. So If anybody would like to jump up here, I would love to have someone. So I got one person waiting. Angelina Frost. Hi, Angelina. How are you?
Hey, good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So what is your opinion on this one? As far as, I don't know how much of the episode you were able to catch, but what is your opinion on this one?
I tuned in right before you brought on Morgan. No. Peterson.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You were talking about respect right before I came up. And it's that is a naturally occurring thing when self-respect is in the house.
Absolutely.
And that's a different thing than arrogance or this urge or this impulse to exert dominance. Right? It's a different thing because it's born out of like the journey of, especially in this culture, the journey of developing self-respect when our respect for ourselves is kind of eroded away through our acculturation experience. And I'm speaking very much about like how things are for us in our culture, because we live in a very authoritarian kind of culture. So that natural self-respect that we're all kind of born with is something that we ultimately end up sacrificing on the altar of culture.
Absolutely. So do you lean more towards my response? So I don't know if you caught the point of what I was saying. I responded to a comment on social media that somebody was commenting on stuff. I've been through cancer a few times. They were commenting on something that was part of my physical appearance, and I had had enough of it. So I commented, and a listener responded and basically said she's very disappointed, and pretty much everything I've ever done has been completely wiped out by my response of just recording a video and doing a video response to this listener or the guy on social media, and just called him an asshole in the process. Like, thanks a lot. And, I forget about my condition until some asshole like you brings it up. So thanks for being that guy. And the listener basically said, I'm done listening to you. You're not who I thought I was. And that was the standpoint that she left it at. And it left me, I think, even more upset than, the insensitive comments. It was like, wow, that's something that small can really turn you off. And do you feel like those in the spiritual community can have that kind of response, or do you feel like she was kind of right? Like, that wasn't probably the highest road that you could have taken.
Well, I mean, whether or not it was the highest road you could have taken, for her to have been so quick to dismiss you in her, high road, kind of high, if that's her being spiritual, then she's got some more stuff to learn. Yeah. That she couldn't have like looked at the other person and been like, wow, how could you be so that way to somebody who's clearly been through a whole bunch of stuff and overcome all this, stuff? Because it's not like you were, yeah, I would have tended to probably asked her a little bit more about like, where are you coming from, sister? Did you not hear the whole thing in its context? Like, it's almost like she decontextualized your standing up for yourself.
Yeah.
And not just
Oh, it cut you off. I think it must have a time frame. Let me, I'm going to tap back on this and see if this lets you back in. I'm not sure who it's going to let in. It is. Okay, I'll let you back in, Angelina. Sorry about that. The time limit is at 5 minutes, so I got to keep an eye on it for you. But you got another 5, so.
Yeah. No, and you can change that in your settings.
I have to. It's been a while since I've been on Wisdom. I haven't done an episode on here in a real long time, so it's completely different now.
Yeah, well, first of all, I wanted to come up just and say, like, I appreciate your voice. I haven't seen you in here before. I've been with Wisdom since maybe 6 months in, so the beginning of 2021 is when I found my way into this community. And so I just appreciate your voice. I appreciate your contribution. I've really appreciated everything that I've heard you say so far. And so the point that I was getting ready to make is that you weren't just taking a stand for yourself, though. Like, you were really kind of taking a stand toward all the people who are getting kind of dissed, who have whatever kind of challenges, or disabilities or whatever, who get dissed by the people who think that it's cool to be a bully publicly.
Yeah.
Right? That's like, and I would have probably done the same thing, this isn't to say like, I don't even know if that would actually be the right thing. I just probably would have done the same thing, because that, to just roll over to somebody who's being publicly like a bully isn't, it's interesting though. I was listening to Coyle Harris this morning on his 5 minutes of something. He does something every single morning at 8:00 Pacific time. It's like 5 minutes of focus. And if you go back and listen to that, it was this morning. He was talking about trolls.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how social media platforms will often kind of almost shadow ban you, or deny you a certain kind of status or visibility in the platform if you demonstrate that you don't deal with trolls well.
I would believe it.
Yeah, and I'd never really thought about that. And somebody who is an aspiring creator who hasn't really fully engaged the whole social media thing, but I aspire to do so. And I thought to myself, yeah, there are going to be trolls out there, people who are just trying to kind of make you something. And so what Coyle was saying today was, ignore them.
Yeah.
Just ignore them, because what they're doing is exactly what they are trying to do, which is get you, knock you off your center.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's not even with regard to, taking the more spiritual or higher vibe, high road. It's more like depriving them of the negative attention that they're looking for.
Yes.
Right. So, but yeah, I would have probably done the same thing.
Thank you.
And too bad that she's so quick and willing and ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, I agreed.
This is not. This isn't for the faint of heart. There's no thing that's easy about taking the spiritual high road when in this world there is so much that isn't that.
Yes. Definitely in the minority when you're in that demographic of people.
Yeah. It's work.
It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. Like I've noticed, I've come to that conclusion, and I just want to mention, the clock's going to tick out on you for a second, but I want to thank you for coming up here and jumping on. I hope to talk to you again soon. I'm going to be doing this a lot more often, so hope to hear you again. It was a great contribution.
Yeah, well, I followed you, and I look forward to seeing more from you, Heath. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
No, she's absolutely right. There are people out there who are going to push the boundaries as far as they possibly can. And for someone to be as fickle as well, to just step right off, that was my opinion. But I guess the validation helps. And I don't think I've heard anything from anybody who actually agreed with this listener. And I hope maybe she was just having a bad day and she actually hears this episode, because her perspective actually did change mine. Like, I Monday morning quarterbacked myself and really thought to myself, is my response, was what I said actually necessary? So yeah, I've had some thoughts about that. And also, Angelina, thank you for acknowledging. I've been actually on this wisdom app when it was beta. So that's why I have the mentor badge on my profile. I think that's why I have it. So, but I was on here when it was in beta. So I've been here from the very beginning, and I was huge on Clubhouse. I loved Clubhouse. And I feel like Clubhouse has turned into something I don't even recognize anymore. I don't care for it. I know it's a little bit more popular than Wisdom, but I'm trying to do what I can to change that and bring some of the thousands of listeners over to this if they think it's a enticement to get live episodes and hear their episodes before everybody else does. Maybe I'll bring people over. I don't know. It's not like I have a massive following or anything. So I got one more guest waiting, so I will take one more person. I have Dr. Delsue Frankson. What are your thoughts on this? How did you get to listen to the entire episode? But when did you jump in?
I heard. I was able to hear when you were summarizing it. I've been in for a few minutes now.
Okay.
And I think it's a great conversation to be had. I truly believe, as a mental health specialist, and I'm also a minister and a life coach and mental health coach. I think every day is another chance for us to get it right and to help others get it right. And so we have to learn to give each other grace. And we're not alone in this human experience, right?
Right.
So on our journey, we all will have moments where we're, you could say, vibrating high or low based on whatever it is we're facing for the day. So because of that, we have to learn how to give each other grace. And for her to totally dismiss you like that, sometimes we talk about like triggers in our field, right? Well, something happened there. I don't know what it is, but one thing I'm encouraging others to have, and also when I train, is to remember that we're not alone in the human experience, and for us to practice mindful self-compassion. So what you're doing today is really good, the reflecting part. How do we do that? Of course, you have to remember you're not alone in the human experience. So you're not going to be the first person this ever happened to. And as far as the way you reacted, it's normal reaction. On some days, like I say, depends on where we are. At the moment, we will react differently, right?
Right.
But that inner critic will come for all of us. I've had moments, right, where people question what you say and why you said it or you reacted, right, because of something from the past. It doesn't matter how educated we are, how knowledgeable we are. It all depends on what we're going through at that moment, how we will respond to situations. And so just learn how to give each other grace. That person should understand your situation, where you're coming from, and understanding that that's a very sensitive area for you based on the experiences that you have, right?
Right.
Like any of us, no matter if we have, we all have triggers, and so at some point, it depends on how we're doing at the moment, right? With everything else that's going on around us,
True.
What type of adversities we're currently facing, we all respond differently, right?
Right.
And so, just give yourself some grace, and it's okay. When you go through this, you've been reflecting. Another thing we should practice too is self-kindness, right? Being kind to yourself. And when you go through situations like this that happen, instead of sitting there wondering what you did wrong, where you're wrong, is everyone feeling that way about me now? Just take some time out and say to yourself, what is it that I need from me right now, right? Obviously, there is something you need for yourself. You could take some time for yourself to reflect and work that out amongst yourself and let it go. Because every day is a brand new day for mercy and grace from the Most High. So I believe brand new slate for us to start over again, like I said, for us to try to get it right and to help others to get it right on our journey. None of us are perfect. And so it's a great conversation to be had, because sometimes we want other people to be perfect, and we're not perfect. None of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes, right?
So true.
And we're all going to have different moments in life where we're going to react to different situations based on the where we are right now currently, right?
Absolutely.
The space we are for the day. Yes.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. It's great to hear how other people feel about, the experience in the world. And it's great that you're actually out there teaching other people about what these experiences mean, and, trying to help people guide them through the process of becoming aware of themselves and the people they're interacting with, and giving yourself that space and grace, because you're going to screw up a lot in the beginning, especially for people just starting out on the path. And years later, you're still going to be making mistakes, but teaching them that grace is an amazing thing to do. So I appreciate your contribution. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it's so important. We have to just learn how to do that sometimes, We want everybody to be perfect, but we're not perfect ourselves. You know, we're all working on ourselves to become better, right? And stronger. And we have to allow others to do the same thing at their pace. Your race, your pace, right?
That's right.
And so we take our time, you know, to improve in our areas of weakness and continue to shine in our areas of strength, right? Each day.
Absolutely.
But we all have something we're working on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. The clock's winding down on your 5-minute timer, which I'm going to erase for the next episode so people can just go on. But thank you for your contributions. Brilliant people that have been jumping up on here tonight. This has been great. The last time I had some people come up on the stage, I'll say that it ended up on the cutting room floor after it was all said and done. So these have both been a couple of great contributions. So thank you guys for joining me. I'm going to cut this one off at a certain point, but I really appreciate the two people that came up. Your contributions were great and likely going to make it to the episode. So, and I will close with this. Someone who thinks that this whole situation is enough to quote unquote erase all I've done. It wipes out hundreds of podcasts, the 1,000 of listeners, the people who've written into me, who've told me that this show's changed their life, all because I called someone an asshole, insulted me. I guess you missed the part of the story where I've explained who I am. I'm no guru. I don't walk on water. I don't hold myself as being better than anyone else. I'm a real person who's been through a lot in a very short amount of time. And I want to get every one of you fired up to go and experience everything that this life has to offer. Make it the best version of your life and make yourself become the best version of you that you possibly can be in this experience. But I am just a student. I am an eternal student at that. There are tests that I'm going to fail until the day that I die. And the things that, I look at that as a failure, I know I'm going to do them better next time. I'm that kind of person. But that doesn't wipe out the A's that I've gotten on life either. The F's don't wipe out my A's. And I've learned along this entire road, this entire path, that the A's were more valuable than anything, and I will always turn those F's into A's, and that's what motivates me to keep on going. And I've helped many other people get those A's as well. And if you're fickle enough that you have to turn your radio off, your phone off, whatever it is you're listening to this podcast on, if you've got to turn that all off because you didn't like that one thing that I said, I guess you missed every point of every one of those episodes you've listened to at this point. So be perfectly imperfect, everybody. It's okay. And if you don't like your response to something that happens to you in life and you want to do better next time, congratulations, you're becoming self-aware. Be connected, love thy neighbor, open your heart up to as many amazing connections that you possibly can in this life. You're going to encounter people and entities, whatever they are, that are here to do the opposite of what you're here to do. So, it's a law of the universe, like I spoke of before. Just be prepared to be that positive swing in the opposite direction then. And if you don't like your responses when your pendulum swings back in the other way, well, that's the great part about Earth School, right? Like, you get another chance to take the test when it comes up, and nothing's failed until you deem yourself a failure. And if you just have one drawback, one fault, one failure, one lack of judgment, whatever it is, it doesn't make you a failure. Not continuing on a path that you're meant for, that's what would make you a failure. I certainly would never ever write anybody off that I've learned so much about, and I've so many valuable people in my life that I like something strange that they might have said and belief that I don't believe in, but I wouldn't cut them off. And when we learn how amazing our connections can be, our lives can really transform in ways that I think is unparalleled. So keep being you, keep being amazing, keep soaring to even higher heights than anybody dreamed of, including yourself. You might not know where you're going or who you're going to do it with, but if you approach it with a good heart, you know that it's going to be the right place whenever you end up there. So, which brings me to the song that we're going to close this episode with. This one is an older one from Eula that I might have played earlier in the podcast, but it's one of my faves, so I'm going to play it again if I've already played it. This one's called Soaring. Keep living your truth, guys. We'll see you next time.
But I'm alone. Yeah, I'm alone. I'll be The stars are my home.